Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Bugbears and Brews. My name is Brian, and tonight we are talking about the final encounter of the Out of Abyss campaign. It was Orcus and Demi Lich versus the party in smack dead middle of the Minzo Brinzen Trade Center Bazaar, whatever you want to call it. So when we left off with the end of the Demon Royal Rumble, Orcus had three normal liches out and a Demi Lich. That would have absolutely made a mess of the party, smashed them in a round or two, especially liches having level 9 castings and time stop and that kind of stuff. Would have made it very unfair and not fun for the party. So what I did instead was some of the liches went out to mess with Minzo Brinzen, forgive me, as a whole. And then Orcus ate one of the liches to regain some of his power, and then that left Orcus and a Demi Lich. Orcus, at the end of the Royal Rumble, was down quite a bit. I think he was down to, looks like, mid-100s on his hit points. So I raised him back up to 290, which is what the book suggested for Demigorgon. And that kept his wand charges the same. He still only had 3 charges left. I made it so he had 1 legendary resistance, which is once again what the book suggested for Demigorgon. I don't think Trevor used any of the legendary resistances during the Royal Rumble there. So the fight as a whole, I think, was pretty well balanced. Having the Demi Lich in there really helped. It's kind of interesting to see that they focus on the Demi Lich first. And they grouped up on the Demi Lich. So while they almost had the Demi Lich down like the first round or second round, something like that, it was down to, I think, 10 hit points. But everybody was surrounding this thing, and I had Orcus do his creeping death, which makes everybody vulnerable to necrotic damage, and then did the Demi Lich's life drain. I forget what the name of the actual mechanic or the action is, and gathered all his health back from the characters surrounding him. Seeing that this happened, the cycle happened like once or twice, they decided, you know what, we absolutely got to nuke this Demi Lich before we proceed on to Orcus. There were a couple players that did keep playing with Orcus during all this. Darnella and his pack of zombies was one of them. I forgot what Darnella did originally to grab Orcus's ire, though. I don't remember what it was. But luckily, Darnella had a contingency of this impenetrable sphere, and couldn't do anything from Orcus's side. And then cast Blink and was going in and out of the world with some phases. So that was pretty nice for Darnella to be able to be like, hey, I'm going to go ahead and focus on Orcus, and then Orcus can't harm me because I'm in the sphere. And granted, she couldn't do anything back during the time frame in the sphere, but whenever she did pop out, she had that blink going, so it was like anytime that Orcus was mad, it just happened to be that Darnella blinked out for the most part. There's 1 or 2 times that it didn't happen, but all in all, it worked out pretty well for Darnella. Looking here, just kind of reviewing some of my notes here real quick. After killing the Demi Lich, Orcus took off in the air, and that's when the party had to kind of figure out what to do. Erebith, who is a paladin, I don't know if I mentioned Erebith before in the previous videos. I'm sure I have. I mean, he's a player from, he's been with us for probably midway through the season. He's the only one that had the ability to fly up there. Some people had the range weapons and that kind of stuff, but they not having the sneak attack for Cinder, the rogue, made it pretty tricky. Darnella not really having much offensive capabilities. Necromancers is her wizard background, and she focuses more on like crowd control and that kind of stuff, so that made it a little tough. But Cinder pulled out a shield guardian that they had from the campaign, and the shield guardian actually came with Wall of Force, and that worked out nice because Cinder placed the Wall of Force on Orcus, and it made Orcus go down almost to the ground, and then Darnella actually managed, believe it or not, to get a telekinesis grab on Orcus. Of course, that didn't make Orcus happy, and there was actions against Darnella, which immediately dropped the telekinesis, but it made it so that way Orcus didn't really do anything besides focus on Darnella as the party gathered around. I gotta take a drink here, sorry. Once Orcus was trapped on the ground, it went pretty quick. There was a fun moment there where Draco tossed all of the beads of fire, or the beads from the necklace of fireballs. I think it was altogether 9 beads. Maybe I'm wrong there. Maybe 6. I don't recall the exact amount. It is quite a bit. But toss all the beads there and actually wound up knocking out most of Darnella's undead with that, and then Orcus took out the rest of them with one of his spells. But that was a pretty cool moment. And then, like I said, between the Wall of Force and Telekinesis, that really made the fight, bringing it back down to the ground, made it pretty easy for the characters. I mean, they still took quite a bit of damage. None of them died. I don't think any of them actually got too close to death. Sorry about that. I don't think any of them got down more than 25%. Or most of them were less than half hit points, but I don't think anybody got below 25 hit points. Except for, now that I think about it, one of them said they were down to 10. That might have been Darnella, but I'm not sure on the specifics. After the end of Orcus, when they killed him, which was actually delivered by a death blow by Draco, which was cool, considering that Draco killed Jublix and then Orcus killed Draco, and Draco was then resurrected as a dwarf. We didn't do anything stat-wise just because we wanted to get the game rolling, so Draco was mid-change, part dwarf, part Dragonborn, and didn't use his breath weapon or anything like that, even though I said, you know what, it's completely fine, go ahead and use your breath weapon if you want, but he opted not to. I thought it would have been kind of funny to see a dwarf do a breath weapon attack, but it didn't. After that, I had a scene come out where Draxel, it's like, hey, I told you guys that I'm going to kick your ass if you do this in my city, but the party was able to pass it off that it was all Devir's plan. They had no idea that this was happening. So Draxel went and hunted down Devir. Normally I have, at the end of the campaign, I have a little summary or scenario that happens for each of the players or each of the characters going on this, or going post campaign, to see, you know, here's what happens to your character throughout. I didn't have time to prep that this time around, which I apologize for that to them, but I did go around the table and ask what they all did. Cinder, who was our rogue, wanted to relax for a little bit, and then he went and headed up the hunt for Baphomet, because that was the one demon lord that escaped. Draco went back to his cloister and started training the next round of paladins, and besides that, lived a pretty quiet life. Nyx remained with Bregan to Earth, getting up into the upper echelons of the inner circle, or outer circle. Not quite in like the in crowd, but like very close, that he can smell their farts when they leave the room. Walker went back up to the top and just walked around in the woods and did the druidy, make sure my woods don't get tainted thing. Erebeth went and searched for a nice holy sword, found the holy sword, and then joined the hunt for Baphomet. And Darnella returned to Blingdenstone and orchestrated a semi-civil war in Minzo Berinzen. However, if you remember, Darnella was part of the plan to have this this whole shindig take place in Minzo Berinzen, and eventually, through digging through the notes of Devir, Bregan to Earth found that Darnella had a hand in this. So what they did was they bided their time. And eventually they sent a drow by the name of Inigo into Blingdenstone, which Inigo was actually, I'll get to that here. But Inigo ended up assassinating Darnella in her sleep a couple years after this scenario played out, or after the campaign wrapped out. But Inigo was Darnella's original character. Inigo died in the battle for Blingdenstone. She killed Chipgrin, who was he killed Chipgrin, who was a were-rat leader. Really didn't like the dude, so killed him, partly because Inigo was turning into a were-rat and didn't want to join the were-rat community, and also wanted to stand up for Topsy and Turvy, who didn't want to join that were-rat community. But then Darnella went ahead and kept Inigo around as a zombie. So that was one of the zombies that got lost in Minzo Brinzen when they had to do their whole split, and then some members of Breaking to Earth found Inigo and resurrected Inigo, brought him back to life, and used him to further their agenda. So all in all, the campaign, I like it. It was fun. I thought they had too much focus on exploration, or not exploration, travel. Too much focus on what happens between City A and City B. And in the Underdark, it's just a lot of rolling on tables, and we actually ended up skipping most of that stuff just because after the first few months of doing it, it got kind of old to the party. I left it up to them if they want to go ahead and talk it out or roll and doing that kind of stuff. Each time we did wind up doing a couple rolls. That's why we always conveniently teleported 2 days away. So we always did have a little bit of roll there, but we didn't have, if you look at these tables, some of these places are hundreds of miles apart, which would have been like 20 days worth of rolls and just would have been too much. We wouldn't have gotten anywhere fast. I think that for it being called Out of the Abyss and really focusing on demons, there's not a lot of demon play in it. If I ever ran it again, or if I was giving advice to somebody wanting to run it, I would say bring the demons a little bit more to the forefront. Yes, there's some subtle hints of it, but you don't really do a lot of demon fighting. It's kind of a disappointment for my, some of my players that were like, oh yeah, gung ho, let's kick some demon ass. But well, guess what? There's not much demon ass to kick. Was it my favorite campaign? No. I would probably rank this in my lower mid-range campaigns that I've completed, honestly. It just felt like it dragged on. I was ready for it to be done with. But I did have fun with it. I'm not saying it was a bad campaign. I'm just saying out of all of it, it just really felt like it dragged on. There were some really good parts towards the end there, like the Beholder Enclave. That was really fun. The whole Demon Lords and sinking into Minzo Brinzen, that kind of stuff. I mean, all the sessions were really fun. However, it just... something about this one just kind of irked on me. Being in the Underdark for so long, it just kind of sucks. And none of the players really felt like their character had a real strong tie into this. It was all kind of loose, like, okay, we're the guys that did it the first time. We escaped the Underdark and have this information. I guess we'll go in and end it. But they didn't. There wasn't much strong player motivation there for it either. So that kind of helped bring it down a little bit as far as my enjoyment of the campaign as a whole. Now, talking to the players, sounds like they kind of had the same gripes as I did. I mean, they all enjoyed the campaign, but they definitely had the same of like, why are we doing this? My guy escaped to the top side. There's no way he would go back into the Underdark, but they did. We actually had one player, sadly he stopped due to personal obligations, but once his character made it to the top side, he was an old dude and he didn't want to go back down, so he sent his son back down into the Underdark for him. Which that was a kind of cool trade-off. So I'm going to go ahead and end here, call it a night, spend some time with my wife. Looks like she's getting ready to fall asleep or something there on me. So cheers, guys. Take care, and I look forward to talking about Storm King's Thunder here next week. Bye.